The chamber floated in the darkness between stars. A massive structure built by hands and tentacles and things that had no name in human languages. Inside, 47 beings gathered, each one representing a civilization that had conquered the stars. Some appeared as shimmering holograms projected across light years. Others sat in their physical forms, breathing methane or chlorine or nothing at all. At the center of the great circular room, a display showed a small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. Earth. Admiral Katva stood before the assembly. His forearms gestured at the spinning image while his scaled face remained expressionless. He had done this presentation 17 times before, for 17 other worlds. None of those worlds existed anymore. The species calls themselves humans, Katva said. His voice translated into 47 different languages simultaneously. They achieved atomic weapons before they left their own atmosphere. They split their world into competing factions and came within moments of total self-destruction no less than 6 times. A murmur rippled through the chamber. One of the delegates, a being made of crystallized light, pulsed with concern. They develop artificial intelligence without proper safeguards, Katva continued. They manipulate their own genetic code. They send signals into deep space, announcing their location to any species that might be listening, with no consideration for the dangers. The display changed to show human cities, vehicles, weapons. Then it shifted to something else, something that made several delegates recoil. Worse still, they create scenarios of conquest, stories, fantasies. They imagine themselves spreading across the galaxy, defeating alien species, claiming territory that does not belong to them. The screen showed covers of books, frames from movies, pages from comics. Humans fighting aliens. Humans winning. Always winning. A delegate from the Zephyros Collective spoke up, its voice like wind through crystal caves. Perhaps these are merely entertainment? Cautionary tales? Our cultural analysts have studied over 10,000 examples, Katva replied. The pattern is clear. They dream of dominance. They fantasize about being the strongest species in the galaxy. They call it humanity, fuck yeah, in their own crude language. The chamber fell silent. Elder Votan, a being who had lived for 3,000 years, slowly raised one withered appendage. I have seen species like this before. When I was young, a race called the Carthresh reached the stars. They too dreamed of empire. By the time we acted, they had already destroyed 4 peaceful worlds. Katva nodded. Precisely. The humans have every marker. Aggression, nuclear capability, uncontrolled artificial intelligence development, genetic manipulation, expansionist philosophy, and most damning, they have already detected our presence through their primitive sensors and declared they will fight for survival against any threat. They have united their entire planet in preparation for conflict with us. This was not entirely true. Earth had not detected the Galactic Council, but a few radio transmissions had been misinterpreted by Council listening posts, and Katva saw no reason to complicate the matter with nuance. The protocol is clear, said Representative Cloth. A being whose species had nearly been wiped out by an aggressive race millennia ago. Species exhibiting 7 or more danger markers must be eliminated before they achieve faster-than-light travel. Humans exhibit all 12. The voting began. One by one, the civilizations of the galaxy made their choice. Some voted quickly, having already decided. Others took longer, their representatives conferring with homeworlds across vast distances. Not a single voice spoke in defense of humanity. The final tally appeared in the center of the chamber. 47 in favor of termination. 0 against. 0 abstentions. Katva bowed his head in acknowledgement. The armada of 12 suns will depart immediately. We will reach the Sol system in 14 Earth months. The species will be eliminated before they develop faster-than-light capability. Their sun will remain unharmed. The planet will be rendered uninhabitable but structurally intact, available for terraforming in 10,000 years. As the delegates began to disperse, returning to their ships or dissolving their holographic forms, Keva remained standing before the image of Earth. He felt no pleasure in this task, but no guilt either. He was a soldier. He followed protocols. These protocols had kept the galaxy safe for 20,000 years. Somewhere in that blue planet cities, billions of humans went about their lives. They ate meals with their families. They laughed at entertainment. They fell in love and made plans for futures that would never come. They looked up at the stars and wondered if they were alone in the universe. They would have their answer soon enough. Katva turned away from the display and walked toward the hangar where his command ship waited. The armada of 12 suns was the most powerful military force ever assembled. 12 dreadnoughts, each one capable of cracking a planet's crust. 300 support vessels. Weapons that could boil oceans or freeze atmospheres, or simply erase all biological life with a pulse of energy that it was excessive force for dealing with a pre-FTL species. But the Council took no chances. His second-in-command, a three-eyed being named Jor-Al, fell into step beside him. "The ships are ready, Admiral. We can depart within the hour." "Good. Set course for the Sol system. Maximum sustainable speed." "Yes, Admiral." Zor-El hesitated. "Sir, some of the crew have been reading the human transmissions we intercepted. Their mathematics, their music, their art. Some believe." "Believe what?" Ketva's voice carried a warning edge. "Nothing, sir. We will follow orders." Ketva stopped walking and fixed his subordinate with a hard stare. "The humans are clever. That makes them more dangerous, not less. Do not let their primitive charm deceive you. We have seen what happens when aggressive species reach the stars. We have visited the dead worlds they leave behind. We have counted the bodies of peaceful civilizations caught unprepared." "Of course, Admiral." "Forgive me." They continued to the hangar in silence. Around them, the station hummed with activity as crews prepared for departure. Within the hour, the Armada would begin its journey. 14 months of travel through the dark between stars, and then the task would be complete. Another species eliminated. Another threat neutralized. The galaxy would be safe once more. Ketva did not look back at the chamber, at the image of that blue planet spinning peacefully in the darkness. He had learned long ago not to think too much about the lives that would end. It made the work harder. He was a soldier. He had a job to do. The countdown had begun. Dr. Sarah Chun had been staring at the same signal pattern for 6 hours straight. Her eyes burned. Her coffee had gone cold 3 times. But she could not look away from the screen. The radio telescope in Arecibo had picked up something impossible. "Run it again," she told her assistant. Marcus, who looked just as exhausted as she felt. The pattern repeated on the screen. A series of pulses, perfectly timed, definitely artificial, and definitely pointed at Earth. "It's a countdown," Marcus said quietly. "Sarah, it's counting down. I know what it is." Her fingers flew across the keyboard, adjusting filters, checking for errors. There had to be an error. "How long?" Marcus did the calculation 3 times before answering. 14 months. Give or take a week. Sarah felt her stomach drop. She had spent her entire career searching for signs of alien life. She had written papers about what humanity should do if we ever received a message from the stars. She had given TED Talks about first contact protocols. None of those papers or talks had prepared her for this. "We need to tell someone," Marcus said. "Tell them what?" "That we picked up a signal that might be a countdown to..." "What?" "We don't even know what it means." But she did know. Deep in her gut, she knew someone was coming. And they were not coming to say hello. Within 3 days, every major government on Earth had confirmed the signal. Radio telescopes from China, Russia, Australia, and South Africa all detected the same pattern. The countdown was real. Within a week, optical telescopes found them. 12 massive objects moving through space at impossible speeds, heading directly toward the solar system. The objects were enormous, bigger than cities, and they were slowing down in a way that violated every known law of physics. Humanity had 14 months to prepare for the end of the world. Or so they thought. Far beyond Pluto, beyond the scattered rocks of the Kuiper Belt, in the vast empty darkness of interstellar space, Voyager 2 continued its lonely journey. The little probe had been flying away from Earth for nearly 50 years, carrying a golden record with sounds and images from humanity's home world. The probe was old. Its instruments had been failing for years. NASA had lost contact with most of its systems back in 2025, but it kept flying. A tiny ambassador carrying humanity's message to whoever might find it. Then something changed. A cosmic ray, one in billions that had passed harmlessly through the probe systems over the decades, struck at precisely the wrong moment. It flipped a single bit in Voyager's ancient computer memory. The probe's backup transmission system, dormant for years, suddenly activated. The golden record began to play. The malfunction caused the recording to transmit on repeat, broadcasting in all directions. Greetings in 55 languages. The sound of wind, thunder, and human laughter. A baby crying. A kiss. Music from cultures across the world. Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. Chuck Berry singing Johnny Be Good. A Navajo chant. Japanese shakuhachi flute music. Bach's Brandenburg Concerto. The sounds of Earth poured into the void. A glitched transmission from a broken machine, sent by a species that did not even know their probe still functioned. The signal traveled at the speed of light, spreading outward like ripples in a pond. And someone was listening. Rindle sat at her monitoring station, aboard the scout ship Harmony's Edge, watching empty space and wishing she were anywhere else. Her species, the Melodrum, experienced the universe primarily through sound, while other species relied on sight or smell or electromagnetic senses. Her people heard the vibrations of reality itself, which made monitoring duty particularly boring. The empty space between stars was very, very quiet. She was reviewing routine scans when her console suddenly lit up with activity. A transmission coming from the direction of the target system. Protocol required her to report all transmissions immediately. But something made her hesitate. She routed the signal to her personal headset and listened. At first, it was just noise. Random sounds that meant nothing. Thunder, water, strange clicking noises. Then a voice spoke in an unknown language, the tones rising and falling in patterns she had never heard before. Then the music started. Rindle's entire body went rigid. Her sensory tendrils, normally kept pressed flat against her head, suddenly extended fully. Every vibration-sensitive cell in her body focused on the sound coming through her headset. It was beautiful. Not in the way Melodrum music was beautiful, with its perfect harmonies and mathematical precision. This was something else. Something chaotic and wild and absolutely extraordinary. The sounds clashed and competed. Instruments fought against each other, then somehow came together in ways that should not have worked, but did. There were mistakes, imperfections, deliberate dissonances that her training said should be ugly, but instead felt powerful and true. She had been trained to analyze sonic signatures of civilizations. The Melodrum had been doing this for thousands of years. A species' music revealed everything about them. Their violence, their cooperation, their capacity for growth. This music was violent, yes. She could hear aggression in some of the sounds. But she also heard joy. She heard sadness so deep it made her chest ache. She heard hope and defiance and love and longing. She heard a species that felt everything, all at once, and poured it into sound. The transmission continued. More voices, more languages, more music. A man singing in a style that her translator called rock and roll. A woman's voice rising in what might be a prayer or a celebration. She could not tell which. Drums, strings, wind instruments. Sounds made by machines and sounds made by throats. Rindle checked the timestamp. The transmission was coming from a small probe, very old, damaged. It was repeating the same recording over and over. This was not a military broadcast. This was not a threat. This was a message in a bottle, thrown into the cosmic ocean by a species that hoped someone might someday find it. Her hands moved to report the transmission to her superior officers. But she stopped. If she reported this now, it would be logged as confirmation that humanity was broadcasting aggressively into space, another mark against them. The transmission would be filed as evidence and never truly heard. Rindle made a decision that would change the fate of two species. She did not report the transmission. Instead, she downloaded it to her personal storage and began to listen to everything humanity had ever sent into space. She had 14 months before the Armada reached Earth. She intended to use every moment. Back on Earth, Sarah Chun stood before a room full of world leaders and delivered the worst news in human history. "They're slowing down," she said, pointing to the data on the screen. "Whatever these ships are, they're going to stop at our solar system. We have 14 months. Maybe less." A Russian general stood up. "Then we fight? With what?" Sarah asked. "We barely made it to Mars. They crossed light years. Then we negotiate. How? We don't even know if they can hear us." But humanity tried anyway. Every radio telescope on Earth turned outward and began transmitting. Greetings, please, offers of peace. Mathematical proofs to show intelligence and music. So much music. If this was the end, humanity would face it singing. Rindle had stopped sleeping. Her quarters, aboard the Harmony's Edge, were small but comfortable, designed for the specific needs of a melodram. Vibration dampeners kept the ship's engine noise from overwhelming her senses. Sound-emitting panels could recreate the harmonic frequencies of her home world. But for the past 3 weeks, she had not used any of it. Instead, she sat at her personal terminal, listening to transmissions from Earth. She had started with the golden record from the damaged probe. She had listened to it 47 times, memorizing every sound. Then she had searched the archives for other human transmissions intercepted over the past century. Radio broadcasts, television signals, music recordings that had leaked into space. The humans had no idea how much. They had been talking to the universe. What she found terrified her, not because humanity was dangerous, though their capacity for violence was obvious in their entertainment and news broadcasts. She was terrified because the Galactic Council had made a catastrophic mistake. Rindle pulled up a recording she had found from something humans called a concert. Thousands of humans had gathered in one place while a group of them created sounds together using instruments. The audience did not participate. They simply listened. This concept was alien to melodram culture. Among her people, all music was participatory. Everyone contributed to the harmonic whole. The idea of some individuals creating while others only received was strange, but as she watched the video, she understood. The performance was of something called Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. The piece built slowly, instruments adding layer upon layer of complexity. Then voices joined, singing in a language her translator said was German. The conductor, an old human with wild hair, moved with desperate passion. The musicians played as though their lives depended on every note. And in the audience, she saw humans crying, not from pain, From beauty, Rindle had studied the circumstances of this recording. The concert had taken place after a terrible war. Millions had died. Cities had been destroyed. And in the aftermath, humans had gathered to create this sound together. She thought about the melodram. Her own species had nearly destroyed themselves 1,000 years ago. They had split into factions, each one convinced they held the only true harmony. They had fought wars over musical philosophy. They had been saved by an accident. A young melodram child, injured in the fighting, had created a new song while recovering. The song had been imperfect, full of mistakes and influences from multiple factions. By all traditional standards, it should have been terrible. Instead, it had been transcendent. That song had reminded her people what they had forgotten, that beauty could come from chaos, and that different harmonies could work together instead of fighting. Looking at the humans, she saw the same pattern. They fought, yes. They destroyed, yes. But they also created. They also sought beauty in the darkness. She found a recording of a human named Carl Sagan talking about a picture of Earth taken from space. He called it a pale blue dot and spoke about how small and fragile humanity's home was. His words were poetry. Everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives on that mote of dust, he said. Rindle played the recording 5 times. This human understood. He saw his species clearly, both the beauty and the horror. And he chose to speak about preserving the beauty. She began compiling evidence. Every transmission that showed human cooperation. Every piece of music that demonstrated emotional complexity. Every news broadcast about humans helping each other after disasters. She knew it would not be enough. The council's decision had been unanimous. They would not reverse course based on the findings of a junior communications officer. But she had to try. The problem was getting an audience with Admiral HFY. The Admiral did not take meetings with officers of her rank. The chain of command was clear and absolute. Rindle spent days trying to figure out a solution. She submitted official reports that were ignored. She tried to schedule meetings that were denied. She sent messages that went unanswered. Finally, she did something that would almost certainly end her career. She triggered a priority alert claiming she had discovered evidence of faster-than-light capability in the target system. It was a lie, but it was a lie that would force the Admiral to see her immediately. 2 hours later, she stood in Admiral HFY's ready room, her career hanging by a thread. The Admiral looked at her with 4 unblinking eyes. His scales were dark with anger. You filed a false report. You understand this is a court-martial offense? Yes, Admiral. Then explain yourself, quickly. Rindle straightened her posture. Sir, I have evidence that our assessment of humanity is incomplete. Permission to present my findings? You have 5 minutes before I have you removed from the ship. She had prepared for this moment. She pulled up the first recording on her portable display. The golden record. This is a transmission from a probe launched by humans 50 years ago. It was designed to leave their solar system and carry a message about their species to anyone who might find it. HFY's expression did not change. I am aware of the probe. It is evidence of their aggressive expansion philosophy. With respect, sir, it is not. She played the greeting section. Voices in dozens of languages saying hello, offering friendship, expressing hope. Words mean nothing, HFY said. Then listen to this. She played Bach's Brandenburg Concerto. For the first time, the Admiral's expression shifted. Just slightly. His sensory ridges, used by his species to detect vibrations, raised a fraction. What is this? Music, created by a human named Bach 300 years ago. Before they had spaceflight. Before they had computers. They created this with primitive instruments and mathematics. She played more. Mozart, Vivaldi, John Coltrane, Bob Marley, a traditional song from Mongolia, a children's lullaby from Nigeria. Katva listened in silence. His four hands gripped the edge of his desk. Sir, I have analyzed over 10,000 human cultural transmissions. Their music, their art, their philosophy. Yes, they are violent. Yes, they are dangerous. But they are also capable of extraordinary beauty. They create art in the middle of wars. They compose music while facing extinction. They look at the universe and respond with wonder instead of fear. You are young, Kitva said quietly. You have not seen what I have seen. Aggressive species do not change. They reach the stars and they destroy. Better to stop them now, while we can, than to wait until they have weapons that can threaten us all. Rindal took a deep breath. She had one more recording. She had been saving it. Sir, please listen to one more piece. Then, if you still want to court-martial me, I will accept the consequences. She played the recording of Nessun Dorma, an opera sung by a human named Pavarotti at a concert for peace. The setting had been a plaza in a city that had been bombed during one of their wars. The concert was meant to celebrate the end of the fighting. The tenor's voice rose and fell, full of pain and hope and defiance. The lyrics spoke about not sleeping, about facing the darkness and knowing that victory would come with the dawn dot. And at the end, the audience wept. Thousands of humans crying together because the song reminded them that they had survived, that they could choose peace instead of war. Rindal watched the Admiral's face as he listened. She saw his hands slowly relax. She saw his sensory ridges lower. She saw something in his eyes that might have been recognition. When the recording ended, silence filled the room. My species nearly destroyed ourselves, Katva finally said. We fought wars over territory and resources. Millions died before we found wisdom. Yes, sir. You are asking me to disobey a direct order from the Galactic Council, to put my crew at risk based on music and hope. I am asking you to give humanity a chance to prove they can change. The same chance someone gave your species. And mine. Ketra stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars ahead. They were still months away from Earth, but they were getting closer every day. What you are asking is impossible, he said. Rindal felt her heart sink. Then the Admiral turned to face her. But I will try. Admiral Katva had commanded the armada of 12 suns for 20 years. He had eliminated 4 species during that time. Each one had met the criteria. Each one had shown the markers of dangerous expansion. Each one had been destroyed before they could threaten the galaxy. He had never questioned his orders before. Now he stood in his private quarters, listening to a recording of humans singing. The song was called Imagine, and it spoke about a world without war, without hunger, without division. It was naive and impossible, and it made something in his chest ache. He had given Rindal permission to compile a full report. For 3 weeks, she had done nothing but analyze human transmissions, building a case that would be presented to the Galactic Council. It would not be enough. Katva knew this. The Council did not reverse decisions, but he had promised to try. The problem was how to contact the Council without revealing his doubts to his crew. If his officers knew he was questioning the mission, morale would collapse. Some might even relieve him of command for mental instability. He needed to move carefully. On Earth, Sarah Chun watched the countdown tick down. 8 months remaining. 8 months until the alien armada arrived at Earth. The world had changed in ways she could never have imagined. Nations that had been enemies for centuries were working together. Resources that had been spent on weapons were now redirected to communications. Humanity had united with a single purpose, not to fight. That would be suicide. Instead, they would talk. They would sing. They would show whoever was coming that Earth was worth saving. Every radio telescope on the planet transmitted continuously messages in mathematics, greetings in every human language, and music. Always music. The Library of Congress had opened its archives. Every recording, every piece of sheet music, every cultural treasure was being broadcast into space. The Louvre, the Smithsonian, the British Museum. Cultural institutions from every nation shared their collections freely. If humanity was going to die, they would die showing the universe who they had been. Sarah had been given a special assignment. The United Nations had asked her to coordinate the cultural transmission project. It was her job to decide what humanity should share with the approaching aliens. She worked with musicians, artists, philosophers, and historians from around the world. Together, they created a message that represented all of humanity, not just the powerful or the wealthy. They included songs from indigenous tribes that had been singing the same melodies for thousands of years. They included modern pop music and ancient chants. They included art from children and masterpieces from legendary painters. One transmission in particular gave Sarah hope. A 12-year-old girl from Kenya had submitted a song she had written about wanting to meet aliens someday. The song was simple, with a melody played on a homemade instrument. The lyrics were about friendship and curiosity and wonder. Sarah made sure that song was transmitted on repeat, alongside Beethoven and the Beatles. If the aliens were listening, they would hear that song. They would hear a child who looked at the stars with hope instead of fear. Aboard the Harmony's Edge, Rindal had completed her report. It was comprehensive and detailed. Over 300 pages of analysis backed by thousands of audio and video samples. She had organized it into sections. First, evidence of human cooperation. Examples of humans working together to solve problems, helping strangers, sacrificing for others. The formation of the United Nations. International rescue missions. Medical aid to other nations. Second, evidence of emotional complexity. Art that showed the full range of human experience. Music that expressed joy and sorrow, anger and peace, loneliness and love. Literature that questioned violence and promoted understanding. Third, evidence of self-awareness. Humans talking about their own flaws. Philosophers and poets who warned against the dangers of aggression. Activists who fought to make their species better. Finally, evidence of change. Statistics showing declining violence over time. The gradual expansion of rights and dignity to more members of their species. The growing environmental movement. Signs that humanity was learning, slowly, to be better than they had been. It was not a perfect case. There was still violence on Earth, still war, still inequality. But Rindal argued that eliminating a species for being imperfect would mean eliminating all species, including the ones sitting on the council. She brought the report to Admiral Kaitva. He read it in silence over the course of 2 days. When he finally summoned her to his ready room, his expression was unreadable. "This is good work," he said. "It will not be enough. I know, sir. The council will say the potential for beauty does not erase capacity for destruction. They will say we cannot take the risk. Yes, sir. But I am going to present it anyway." He stood and walked to his communication console. "I am going to do something that has never been done in the history of the Galactic Council. I am going to refuse a termination order and demand an emergency review." Rindal felt her sensory tendrils extend fully in shock. "Sir, that could end your career. You could be imprisoned." "Yes." He began composing a message. "But if I do nothing, I will have to live with the knowledge that I destroyed a species that might have become something extraordinary. That is a worse fate than prison." The message was sent on a priority channel directly to the council chambers. It included Rindal's full report, along with Kaitva's formal refusal to complete the mission without review. Within hours, the Armada received the response. The council demanded an explanation. They ordered HFY to continue the mission immediately. They threatened court-martial and imprisonment. HFY responded with a single word: no. The armada of 12 suns stopped moving. For the first time in its journey, the massive ships hung motionless in space, still months away from Earth. The crew was confused. Orders were not refused. Missions were not stopped. What was the Admiral doing? HFY addressed his entire fleet. I have requested an emergency review of our mission. Until the Council convenes and makes a new determination, we will hold position here. I know this is unusual. I know it seems like a violation of protocol. But I have seen evidence that our target species deserves a chance to present their case. I will not destroy a civilization without being absolutely certain it is necessary. There was mutiny talk among some of the crews, but most of the officers trusted their admiral. He had never failed them before. If he said this was necessary, they would wait. On Earth, telescopes detected the change. The alien ships had stopped moving. They were holding position at the edge of the solar system. No one knew what it meant. Sarah Chun stood before the UN General Assembly and delivered a report. The ships have stopped. We don't know why, but we're going to keep transmitting. If they're listening, we need to give them reasons to spare us. The transmissions continued. Music and art and pleas and hope, all directed at the silent ships hanging in the darkness. On the Nexus station, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session for the first time in 200 years. The 47 civilizations gathered in anger and confusion. An admiral had refused orders. This was unprecedented. This was unthinkable. Representative Cloth spoke first, their voice full of outrage. HFY must be relieved of command immediately. His actions are a direct violation of galactic law. But Elder Votan raised a hand. Before we make that decision, we should examine his evidence. He claims to have found information that changes the assessment of the target species. What information could possibly justify refusing a direct order? Cloth demanded. Let us find out. Votan gestured to the central display. Present the evidence. Ringel's report appeared before all 47 representatives. The recordings played. The images showed. The analysis scrolled past. For 3 full days, the council reviewed everything. They listened to Beethoven and Bob Marley. They watched videos of humans helping each other after disasters. They read poetry about peace and philosophy about the value of life. Some representatives were moved. Others remained skeptical. The debate raged. This is propaganda, Cloth argued. Every species can show examples of beauty. It does not change their fundamental nature. But should we not consider the possibility of growth? Asked the representative from the Zephyros Collective. Our own species were violent once. We changed. Perhaps humans can as well. Or perhaps they will destroy us while we wait for them to change, Cloth shot back. The arguments continued for days. The vote was called multiple times and delayed each time. The council was divided in a way it had not been in millennia. Finally, Elder Votan spoke. There is one voice we have not heard from. The eldest has been silent for 10,000 years. Perhaps it is time to wake them. A hush fell over the chamber. The eldest was the uploaded consciousness of the first species to achieve spaceflight. They had existed for over 1 million years. Their mind preserved in quantum computers. Observing, but never interfering with galactic affairs. No. One could remember the last time the eldest had spoken, but the situation was unprecedented. A voice was needed to break the deadlock. The call went out across the galaxy. Eldest, we seek your wisdom. And in the depths of space, in a station older than most stars, something ancient began to wake. The eldest had not spoken to any living being in 10,000 years. Most species in the galaxy believed it was dead, or had transcended to some state beyond caring about physical concerns. Some thought it was a myth, but it was very much real, and it was listening. The eldest existed in a quantum computational matrix housed in a station built when the galaxy was young. Its original biological form had died 1,000,000 years ago, but its consciousness had been preserved, watching civilizations rise and fall. Learning everything there was to learn about life in the universe. It had remained silent by choice. The younger species needed to make their own decisions, their own mistakes. The eldest had interfered once long ago, and the results had been catastrophic. Since then, it had only observed, but now the council had called for its wisdom. And the eldest had been watching Earth very carefully. The call came through every communication channel simultaneously. Every member of the Galactic Council heard the same message in their own language, in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "I have been listening to the humans," the eldest said. "I have heard their music. I have seen their art. I have studied their history. I will speak at the council." The representatives gathered in stunned silence. The eldest was coming. It took 3 days for the eldest's consciousness to be transferred to the Nexus Station systems. During that time, Earth continued its transmissions, unaware that the fate of their entire species hung on the decision of something that had been alive before humans had even learned to use fire. Sarah Chun was in her office at the UN when the alert came through. The alien ships were moving again. Not toward Earth, not away. They were repositioning into a new formation. "What does it mean?" asked Marcus, who had barely left the facility in 8 months. "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "But something's changed." Around the world, people stopped what they were doing and looked up at the sky. In city squares, families gathered around screens showing the telescope feeds. In small villages, elders told stories about the end times while children held each other close. Humanity waited. In the council chambers, the eldest's presence filled the room. It did not appear as a hologram or a physical form. Instead, it existed as a field of awareness, a consciousness so vast that every representative could feel it pressing against their minds. When it spoke, reality itself seemed to vibrate with its words. "I have lived for over 1,000,000 of your years," the eldest said. "I have watched 3,000 species achieve spaceflight. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have witnessed beauty and horror beyond your comprehension." The council waited. "When I was young, when my species still had bodies, we faced a choice much like the one before you now. We had discovered another species, violent and aggressive, expanding rapidly across their region of space. They exhibited every danger marker you have created, every sign that they would become a threat." Representative Cloth leaned forward. "What did you do?" "We voted to eliminate them," the eldest said. "The vote was unanimous. We built an armada, much like the one you have sent to Earth, and we destroyed them before they could threaten us." A murmur ran through the council. "It was the correct decision," the eldest continued. "By every logical analysis, by every protocol, by every measure of threat assessment, we made the right choice." Cloth nodded with satisfaction. "And it was the greatest mistake in the history of my species," the eldest said quietly, "because we never got to see what they might have become." Silence fell. "After we destroyed them, we found their transmissions, their art, their music, their philosophy. We learned that they had been in the process of change. They had been questioning their own violence. They had been trying to build something better." The eldest paused, and when it spoke again, there was something in its voice that might have been regret. "We destroyed them because we were afraid, because we looked at them and saw only what they were, not what they might become. And in doing so, we robbed the galaxy of whatever beauty they might have created, whatever wisdom they might have shared, whatever unique perspective they might have brought to the community of stars." Elder Votan spoke carefully. But surely, you cannot know what they would have become. Perhaps you saved countless lives. Perhaps, the eldest agreed. But I have spent 1,000,000 years wondering. I have learned this. A species should not be judged by their capacity for destruction alone. Every species that reaches for the stars has that capacity. Every species carries violence in their history. The eldest's attention turned to the recordings from Earth. Music filled the chamber. A human voice singing about love. Another singing about pain. Children laughing. People crying. The question is not whether a species is capable of violence. The question is whether they are capable of choosing something else. And the humans, I hear that choice in their transmissions. They sing while staring into the void, the eldest continued. They create beauty in the face of their own destruction. They look at the universe with wonder instead of fear. They reach for the stars not to conquer, but to explore. Not to dominate, but to understand. These are the qualities of a species worth preserving. These are the qualities of a species that might, in time, become something extraordinary. Representative Cloth stood. With respect, eldest, you are allowing emotion to cloud your judgment. Hope is not a sufficient basis for risking galactic security. You are correct, the eldest said. Hope alone is not enough. But I am not speaking from hope. I am speaking from knowledge. I have watched humanity for their entire existence as a technological species. I have seen their wars, yes, but I have also seen them build hospitals in war zones. I have seen them compose symphonies in concentration camps. I have seen them reach into space not with weapons, but with a golden record full of greetings and music. The eldest's voice grew stronger. I have seen them face their own extinction with courage and grace. And I say to you now, this is a species worthy of joining the galactic community. Not because they are perfect, but because they are trying to be better. I cast my vote. Humanity lives. The chamber erupted in debate. The eldest had spoken, but the final decision still rested with the council. Each civilization had to choose. The vote was called. This time, it was not unanimous. 17 civilizations voted for termination. 29 voted for preservation. 1 abstained. For the first time in council history, a termination order was reversed. Humanity would live. The message was sent immediately to Admiral HFY. His fleet was ordered to make contact with Earth, not as executioners, but as ambassadors. When HFY received the message, he stood alone in his ready room and felt something he had not felt in decades. Relief. He summoned Rindle. We are going to Earth, not to destroy it, to meet them. Rindle's sensory tendrils extended fully. We won. You won, HFY corrected. You and the humans who filled the universe with their music. The armada began moving again, but this time with different intentions. They would stop at Earth. They would make first contact. They would begin the process of bringing humanity into the galactic community. It would not be easy. Humanity would need to prove themselves over time. They would need to show they could control their violent impulses. They would need to learn and grow, but they would be given the chance. On Earth, Sarah Chun was the first to notice the change in the alien ship's trajectory. They were no longer holding position. They were moving toward Earth, but slowly, cautiously. Then the message came. It was in English, translated by systems that had been analyzing human broadcasts for months. People of Earth, we are the Galactic Council. We come in peace. We wish to speak with your representatives. We wish to welcome you to the galaxy. Sarah read the message 3 times before she believed it. Then she started crying. Around the world, the message was received. In every language, the same words. We come in peace. Humanity had been given a second chance. 3 weeks later, Admiral HFY shuttle landed at the United Nations headquarters in New York. The Admiral emerged. Along with Rindle, and several other representatives from different species. The crowd that had gathered was enormous. Millions of humans lined the streets, holding signs, playing music, crying with joy and relief. Sarah-chan was part of the human delegation chosen to meet the aliens. As she shook Admiral Ketva's hand, or rather, one of his 4 hands, she asked the question that had been burning in her mind. Why did you change your minds? Keva gestured to Rindle. Because this officer convinced me to listen. And because you convinced the galaxy that you were worth saving. How did we do that? Rindle stepped forward. Her translator turned her musical speech into English. You showed us who you are. Not just your weapons or your wars. You showed us your music, your art, your hope. You showed us that you look at the universe with wonder. She pulled out a small device and played a recording. It was the song by the 12-year-old Kenyan girl, the one about hoping to meet aliens someday. This song saved your species, Rindle said simply. It showed us that you dream of friendship, not conquest. That you teach your children to look at the stars with hope. Sarah laughed and cried at the same time. Humanity had been saved by the dreams of a child. That evening, the first concert was held. It was organized quickly, but musicians from around the world came together to perform for the alien.